Good. Shall I pretend to have a wish for the next talk again? Better not. It's about incest. It's my first SkeptiCamp. I've heard a lot about the speaker before, so I'm really looking forward to part 4 of the Taboo trilogy. Let's hear it for James Williams.
Hello. Thank you so much. Yeah, I have talked about cannibalism, bestiality, and necrophilia, and now incest. Woo! So I've done a bit of an investigation on incest, and this is all I can fit in 10 minutes. So, what is incest? And firstly, it really depends upon who you ask. So first of all, let's ask the animals, shall we? So when I was looking into this, there's a different word we use in the animal kingdom, and that is inbreeding. So inbreeding is the production of offspring from the mating of organisms that are closely genetically related. And when I first started looking into this, I thought, well, this must not happen in nature because of a thing called inbreeding depression. Here's some sad cats. And inbreeding depression, no laughing please, I have 10 minutes left. Inbreeding depression is an organism's reduced ability to survive that comes from inbreeding. And that is because that's things like high mortality, low fertility, and hereditary diseases. And this happens because inbreeding results in more recessive traits becoming expressed in offspring. And if those traits are negative, then it will present negatively for the offspring, basically. They're not always necessarily bad, but if they are bad, inbreeding depression will occur. This often happens in nature due to population bottlenecks. So say a population becomes really small really quick, inbreeding depression may happen. So I thought inbreeding otherwise just must not happen in nature, and I was just wrong. In fact, everyone was wrong. It was long assumed that wild animals wouldn't inbreed, but in fact, a meta-analysis from last year of 139 studies revealed little support for the idea that animals avoid inbreeding. Basically, inbreeding just happens as a matter of course in the animal kingdom, and when it becomes a problem, that's when avoidance mechanisms start to evolve. So unbiased mating with kin is widespread. Animals are not hardwired to avoid mating with kin. And basically, mechanisms for avoiding inbreeding only evolve when sexual partners are often close together and often related. Then avoidance mechanisms will evolve. That includes things like active mate choice and sex-based dispersal. But that is not the rule. That seems to be when it has to evolve, which really shocked me. In fact, there can even be some benefits to animals inbreeding. It can increase the possibility of beneficial recessive traits becoming fixed in a population. We use inbreeding in agriculture to fix traits in livestock, that kind of thing. And also inbreeding can result in the purging of deleterious traits from your offspring, as well as fixing negative or positive ones. This is called purifying selection. And actually, I discovered researching this. It is incredibly complicated, and I quickly got lost in quite complicated genetics, and it's interesting that inbreeding genetics is still not fully understood, and it's still a very active field of research, because no one fully understands what's going on. Incestual creatures. Lions in their pride... Lions in their prides, the lionesses in prides are often related. And lion prides are followed by groups of bachelor males, and they're often related. So, for example, when the male in a lion pride is driven off or fought or killed, there's no mechanism to stop a father or a brother or a son from taking that position. Sea otters. So those of you who've seen all these talks, you'll notice sea otters always come up. Necrophiles, bestials, the whole shebang. I suspect it's because we study them a lot. But sea otters they were almost hunted to extinction in the 1930s and have recovered their population size, but only because they've resulted to inbreeding. Cheetahs went through a bottleneck event thousands of years ago. So modern day cheetahs are all closely related, and in fact they have like low fertility, high infant mortality, that kind of thing. Bedbugs at it all the time. Banded mongoose love mating with their brothers and their fathers. Fruit flies actively prefer their brothers. Humans, that's you. So we've been through animals, but what about inbreeding in humans? For this, we have a different word again. This is consanguinity. And consanguinity is the characteristic of having kinship with another person or being descended from a common ancestor. For example, me and my brother are quite closely consanguine because our common ancestor is our parents. But me and you, for example, are less consanguine because presumably our common ancestor is further back. In fact, you can have a good idea of how consanguine you are with someone. Here is a fancy little graph of how much DNA you share with different family members. Have I got a daughter? I do. Like your identical twin is 100%, your father, your children 50, all the way down to second cousin, and presumably anyone in the world. So we can have a look at consanguineous relationships in humans. And a relationship is considered consanguineous if the person that you are in a relationship with is a second cousin or closer in terms of their consanguinity to you. And we can have a look at how consanguinity in the world by looking at consanguineous marriage. And here's some wild stats for you. Globally, it's estimated that 8.5% of children have consanguineous parents. An estimated 1 billion people live in communities where consanguineous marriage is the preference. Consanguineous marriage is traditional and respected in most communities of North Africa, the Middle East, and West Asia. And countries located on the Arabian Peninsula have some of the highest rates of consanguineous marriage in the world, and first cousin marriages may account for almost 30% of all marriages in those regions. Here are some examples of consanguineous relationships. Double first cousins, uncle-niece, first cousins once removed, second cousins, and the rare double second cousin, which I don't understand, even though I've looked at this many times. Here is the prevalence of consanguineous marriage around the world. You can see, as we just discussed, North Africa, Middle East, West Asia, very common to have consanguineous marriage. But we've looked at sort of consanguineous marriage, but this somehow feels divorced from the discussion of incest itself, because incest feels like almost its own thing. So incest is human sexual activity between family members and close relatives. But it's important to note that legal and moral definitions are highly dependent on culture, geography, and religion. And sometimes this can include family by marriage, also adoption, that kind of thing. There are many types of incest. So there are obviously kind of like infinite types of incest, but these are some of the most common. You have between adult siblings, between aunts, uncles, nephews, and nieces, that kind of thing. Interestingly, this is legal in the Netherlands. You have then between adult cousins, which we know is very common in North Africa, etc. Between children, between siblings, this seems to be the most common form of incest in the family, is between siblings when they're children. And then between adults and children. So this is when incest plays a role in child sexual abuse. Here is the legality of incest around the world. This is consensual adult incest around the world. So you can see that green is completely illegal. So notable examples are Portugal, Spain, France, Netherlands, Russia, China, India, Brazil. And then sort of darker the red it goes, the more severe the penalty. So most of America you can see is orange, which is a prison sentence for consensual adult incest. And then places like the Arabian Peninsula is prison sentences, life imprisonment, or death penalty. Also, incest is hugely fetishized. In fact, incest pornography is one of the most common categories of pornography on the planet. Here is Pornhub's top 10 search terms from 2009-2015. Draw your attention to mum, which does this, is there for all of the years. Joined in 2014 by stepmum, and then joined in 2015 by stepsister. Also notable, MILF is there too. While they're not your mum, they are someone's mum. So mums feature quite heavily on this list. and then this is not like, oh, that was 2015, that was ages ago. This is last year, and stepmom is still in the top 10. This is the global search terms for incest in the world, and stepmom is in the top 10. This topic is absolutely enormous, and this is all I can fit into a 10-minute talk, and there's still loads to talk about. Like, there's loads to talk about. Third cousins. So we've got religion, we've got history, we've got pets, we've got agriculture, we've got popular culture, we've got religion. I can't possibly go through it all. I do have a longer version of this talk, and if you want to hear it, come speak to me afterwards. But that is it. Thank you.
Just in time. Excellent. Good. We've got multiple questions.
Yay.
Our friend Igor is first in line.
Igor.
What's your theory on the abundance of incest porn on the internet? Or so he was told. Is it just because it's easiest taboo to film, or is there something deeper?
Oh, I don't know. First of all, I feel like incest is more common than we like to think it is. And I think taboos are ripe for shock and for getting clicks and that kind of thing. Ultimately, I don't know. My research hasn't gone that far. But all I know that it is very popular. But why, I don't know. Ask yourselves.
Good. We got a question from Aaron. He asks, if we found that incest was medically safe, should society still restrict it because of potential psychological harms from power relationships and others?
Yeah, so incest, when it plays a part of abusive dynamics, is really damaging. There's a lot of evidence to show that especially parent-child incest, that kind of stuff, is heavily correlated with severe mental health disorders. So I think best just to stay clear. But I think the evidence is quite strong that it is bad. But in terms of like, is it medically safe? Like if you have two adult like people who are engaging in consensual incest, that is like medically safe as long as they aren't like brother and sister and reproducing. But whether it is morally, probably not.
Okay. An anonymous question. How well does the Icelandic app to prevent incest work?
So, those who don't know, Iceland's population is so small that they have to have an app to make sure the person you're dating isn't related to you. After you get past fourth cousins, it's basically like a stranger. So, I haven't used it myself, but I'm presuming it's quite helpful.
Okay.
But surely there was a need, so they made it. So, hopefully that is filling this need.
Good. Another anonymous question. Is the kibbutz effect real?
The what effect, sorry?
Kibbutz.
Is this similar to the Westermark effect?
I have no idea.
Well, I'm going to talk about that instead. So the Westermark effect is this idea that the reason we hate incest is because you grow up with your siblings and then you get like an ick factor. That's just not true as far as we can tell. The Westermark effect seems to be a discredited idea. It just doesn't exist. There's also this idea that if you don't grow up with someone who you're related to and then you meet them as an adult, there's this myth that you'll be attracted to them. Also, no evidence for that either.
Good. Final wordplay of the afternoon, I hope. Are you aware that there is a lot of incest in the Bible? See what I did there?
It's integral to the story, isn't it? Like I feel like in Christianity it was only like forbidden after a certain amount of time. So yeah, heavy amounts of incest in the Bible.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Talk on incest, and Heath Enright's already left.